What's up, everyone? Welcome back to another video, and this time we're going to be taking a look at Wes Craven's filmography. Now, I'm only going to be reviewing the movies that I own. So it's not going to be a complete ranking list, but of the 12 Wes Craven movies that I have in my possession, I'm going to rank all 12 of those movies. I don't have any interest to want to seek out the rest of Wes Craven's filmography, mainly because I just don't feel like it. I just don't want to. I love Wes Craven, but I just don't feel like seeking out movies that don't really have any appeal to me. So with all that being said, let's get started. Coming in at number 12 is going to be The Last House on the Left, 1972. In my original review, I gave this movie a 6.5 out of 10, and I'm sticking by that grade. In terms of what Last House on the Left did for the horror genre, its influence will never go unpraised by me. But when you take all that away and just look at it as a movie, it's all right. It's nothing really all that great. It's nothing really all that spectacular. There are other movies that came out after Last House on the Left that upped all the violence that this movie had. Not only that, this isn't even a good directed movie, to be honest with you. Like, you can tell that Wes Craven was really, really new to the game, so his directing skills were not refined. But you saw the elements of what was to come, and that's kind of the why I give this movie the grade that I give it, is that you see the potential that Wes Craven had. His skills were not just refined yet, but you could see the social commentary that he became known for, the social satire he became known for. What makes this movie not really work for me is that it could be very disjointed with its tone in a lot of areas. There's literally one scene where you got these hillbilly hick cops, and you have like this podunk music playing in the background. Then you have this just jarring scene of these two girls being brutally raped and massacred. And then it jump cuts to one of the girls' families creating a cake, and it's all happy and very Partridge Family-esque. Like, I understand what Craven was going for. I just think it was not properly handled. And those are my thoughts, and I'm sticking to it. Coming in at number 11 is Swamp Thing. Now, Swamp Thing is based off the DC Comics character of the same name. This movie came out in 1982 when the superhero genre literally had just gotten started 4 years prior with Donner's Superman. So the genre was in its infancy. And when you watch Swamp Thing, it clearly shows that the superhero formula had not really been perfected yet. But to this movie's credit, Wes Craven made out to make a superhero horror movie, and I thought he did an overall okay job. You know, there are a lot of things in Swamp Thing that have a lot of potential in it that you could see what Wes Craven wanted to do. But again, the studio that he was working for, they lost a lot of money, they slashed the budget, and Craven pretty much had to do guerrilla filmmaking in order to get this thing done. But for what we ended up getting with this movie, I enjoyed it. Adrienne Barbeau is really good to watch. Ray Wise plays the Swamp Thing himself, and you have a goofy, entertaining fight scene with him in Arcane, with Alec Holland in Arcane. So that's pretty much really all I can say. And for the most part, the Swamp Thing suit does look pretty cool, though you do have a lot of moments where it literally looks like a guy in a rubber suit. Like, it's really, really distracting, really, really jarring. Like, you can only suspend disbelief for so much when the effect goes from looking decent to looking like a Party City outfit. 6.5 out of 10 is what I gave it, and I'm sticking to it. Coming in at number 10 is Shocker from 1989. I like Shocker. I think this is a pretty good movie. The first half of Shocker is actually really, really cool, and it actually plays out like a dark and gritty slasher movie. But when you get to the second half, that's where the movie just completely falls apart and turns into a live-action cartoon, and the two conflicting tones really start to clash with one another. That's not to say that the second half doesn't have good things in it, because it does. It has a lot of decent things in it, but the tone just takes a drastic change from what it was from the first half, and it becomes really, really disjointed. But Mitch Pileggi as Forrest Pinker is a lot of fun. Peter Berg, he's a lot of fun. And the overall just tone of this movie, the overall tone of Shocker, is fun. It's supposed to be a fun movie. Wes Craven tried, but he kind of fell off the radar. He kind of fell off where he was going for, and he didn't really keep that consistent tone. But he still managed to make the movie just fun as a whole, which is why I give it a 7 out of 10. I say check out Shocker. Coming in at number 9 is Scream 3 from 2000. Scream 3, up to this point, was the concluding chapter of the Scream trilogy. I like Scream 3 for what it is. I like the whole Hollywood backdrop and all that aspect. I think once you get to the big revelation with Roman Bridger being the killer and Sidney's half-brother, that's where it got way too convoluted and they had to do a lot of over-explanation. And it just didn't seem right. It just seemed really off. Like, Scream 3 desperately needed Kevin Williamson to come back in order to kind of like make a lot of things make sense with this movie and do a better job at trying to tie 3 to the first 2 movies. But since Williamson did not come back for this and you had Aaron Kruger, he kind of had an uphill battle to fight. And I don't blame Kruger whatsoever. He had to do what he did what he had to do. But Scream 3 has always been a decent movie. I never hated it. I've always had a like for it, a liking to it. It has some good elements that I enjoyed, but it's definitely not the best of the Scream movies, and it is one of the weakest ones. And that's why I'm going to give it a solid 7 out of 10. Coming in at number 8 is The Hills Have Eyes from 1977. I like the original Hills Have Eyes movies. Comparing The Hills Have Eyes to Last House on the Left is comparing apples to oranges. This movie came out 5 years after Last House on the Left, and you can tell that with this movie, Wes Craven had refined his skills just a little bit more. He's a little bit more comfortable behind the director's chair. He's more comfortable with creating the atmosphere and continuing to just exploit that social commentary that his movies have always been known for. But he never ever shoved it in your face and down your throat. It was always subtext. Hills of Eyes is no different. It did that to an extent. It did that perfectly. This movie was a social commentary on the American family, and what would happen if an American family were put into an entire situation where they had to become just as savage as the people who are trying to kill them. I like that whole aspect of this movie, and I thought Wes Craven pulled it off. I mean, when you watch The Hills Have Eyes now, it does have a lot of really bad, hokey moments to it. You know, it doesn't really hold up as it did back in 1977 in terms of its acting or in terms of its pacing and storytelling. But for the overall quality of the movie, and I compare it to Last House on the Left, Hills Have Eyes is a much better movie. And I stand by my grade of an 8 out of 10. I enjoyed it. Coming in at number 7 is Scream 4 from 2011, the last movie to be directed by Wes Craven. Hey, listen, if Wes 4 years after this movie came out, Wes unfortunately passed away to brain cancer, but listen, at least he was able to bookend his career in the franchise that resurrected his career in 1996. And I like Scream 4. I think Scream 4 is a pretty good sequel. I like it better than Scream 3. I think Scream 4 can get a little bit convoluted in a lot of areas. It's not as good as Screams 1 and 2, but 4 does a good job at pretty much acting like a soft reboot of the franchise without completely disrespecting it. And I appreciate that and I enjoy that. And of course, you had Wes Craven as the director, who was pretty much the helmer of these movies. So, of course, he's not going to have this franchise be ravaged and raked over the coals. He's going to do whatever he can and with his power to maintain its core. And for the most part, Scream 4 retains the core of the Scream movies. I gave it an 8 out of 10 when I gave it an 8 out of 10, and I stick by that grade. It's a good movie. It's solid. And I firmly place it at number 7. Coming in at number 6 is The People Under the Stairs, 1991. I like this movie. I think People Under the Stairs is a lot of fun. This is one of those rare horror movies where a child actor does not come across as annoying or grating. He actually comes across as fun and maybe a little bit witty and funny in a lot of areas. I like the whole social commentary of People Under the Stairs about social class and things like that. But Wes never makes it in your face. It's there, but it's not dwelled upon and doesn't become the core of the story. The core of the story is this kid trapped in this house of horrors, and he's trying to escape from this inbred brother and sister, who are just a whole lot of fun to watch on screen. The actor, I think his name was Bruce McGill. I can't remember what his name was. Who played the man? I thought he was very goofy and over the top and a lot of fun. The actress who played his sister, wife, whatever, she pretty much was channeling her Margaret White from Carrie because she was very, very over the top in that aspect, and the performance very, very, very reminiscent of that. But it makes for an overall fun movie. I think where Shocker was just very lopsided, People Under the Stairs kind of like was made with the intent for that to happen. Though I do think in a lot of areas it did get way too over the top, especially when the man starts to wear a gimp outfit that just completely comes across as just random to me. But for the most part, I enjoyed People Under the Stairs. I give it an 8 out of 10. I stand by that grade, number 6. Coming in, all right. Now we're getting into my top 5 favorite Wes Craven movies of all time. Coming in at number 5 is The Serpent and the Rainbow. I like this movie. I have an appreciation for this movie. I think out of Wes Craven's entire filmography, The Serpent and the Rainbow stands out as being very, very unique because it has a very interesting and unique story. So basically, it's about this character named Dr. Allen, played by oh my god, why can't I remember? He was Lone Star in Spaceballs. I don't know why I can't remember his name. I was just talking about him a couple days ago with some people. Anyway, he plays this doctor who goes to Haiti in order to find out about this serum that can apparently turn you into a zombie. Basically, the first 2 halves of this movie is really good, and Wes Craven does a really good job at playing up the psychological aspect of the story, and pretty much making you question if what Dr. Allen's experiencing are hallucinations or actual voodoo magic. Of course, when you get to the third act, it ends up being voodoo magic, and it turns into an Indiana Jones final battle, and it's completely detached from the first 2 acts. I think if Wes Craven would have stuck with the psychological aspect all throughout the movie, it would have been higher than what I originally give it. But since the third act kind of devolves into an Indiana Jones action movie, it kind of takes away from what came before it, and the horror aspect kind of gets washed away in the third act, which I'm not a fan of. But the first 2 acts are really strong, and the cast in general is really, really strong, which is why I stand by my grade of an 8 out of 10. The Serpent and the Rainbow is a movie that was good, that could have been excellent if Wes Craven would have just not went down the easy road, and he just would have maintained that whole psychological aspect and still making the audience question as to what they're seeing is actually real or not real. That's it. I stand by my grade of 8 out of 10 and firmly place it at number 5. Coming in at number 4 is Scream 2 from 1997. I love Scream 2. I really do. I love Scream 2. For a long time, I've always had Scream 2 as my favorite of the franchise. But Scream 2 has a major flaw that should have never happened. They should have never killed Randy in Scream 2. That was this franchise's biggest mistake. And ever since that's happened, these Scream movies to me kind of lost an important part. Randy was a really cool character in that first Scream movie, and he was a cool character in Scream 2. I love Jamie Kennedy as Randy, and by killing him off in this movie, Scream lost its uniqueness, lost that cool factor, lost that geeky cool factor when Randy got killed off. And that's the biggest flaw I had with Scream 2 was the killing of Randy. Everything else in this movie I love, which is why I give it a 9 out of 10 from my previous 10 out of 10. I'm sorry, I can't be generous no more. Killing Randy off was a sin that this franchise committed, and it never recovered from it. And it'll never be the same because of it. So firmly placed at number 4 with a 9 out of 10 is Scream 2. Coming in at number 3 is the first Scream movie from 1996. What can you say about Scream that has not been said before? This was the movie that not only revitalized horror of the 90s, but also revitalized Wes Craven. And I always find it awesome that a legendary horror director like Wes Craven was the one who spearheaded the horror revival. You needed someone from the old guard to reinvent themselves in order for the new guard to rise up. And Wes Craven did that perfectly with Scream. Everything about this movie was fresh and unique. It had a fresh tone, had a quirkiness to it. It had interesting characters to it. It was it was self-referential. It poked fun of itself in a lot of areas. It was something that was cool and unique for the time. I mean, movies like certain movies in Friday the 13th and Nightmare on Elm Street, they touched on that a little bit, but never fully expanded upon it. Scream was that first movie to take the concept of meta humor and just expand upon it, and that's why I like Scream. 96, still a really really good movie, just by itself, still a really good movie. Coming in at number 2 is A Nightmare on Elm Street. How can you not like A Nightmare on Elm Street? Like, I was never the world's biggest Freddy fan. I've grown to appreciate the character and the franchise. I mean, when I first saw the original Nightmare on Elm Street from 1984, the movie really didn't scare me. I didn't really find Freddy to be scary. I still don't. But when you look at Nightmare on Elm Street from a production standpoint and from a technical standpoint, it is so innovative. What Wes Craven was able to do with no money and just camera tricks, it is awe-inspiring. And you have Robert Englund, who put on a fantastic performance as the character. Even though to me, Freddy is not scary, I'll never take away from Robert Englund's performance. He's fantastic. He's great. He is Freddy. He's phenomenal. And the first movie is just phenomenal. Just from a production standpoint, from a technical standpoint, the idea that this was Johnny Depp's first movie is also a nice little treat. And you had Heather Langenkamp as Nancy, who is one of the OG final girls, one of the greatest final girls ever put to film. How can you hate the first Nightmare on Elm Street? You really can't. And speaking of which, coming at number 1, my all-time favorite Wes Craven movie is A New Nightmare. I love A New Nightmare. This is not only my favorite Wes Craven movie, this is my favorite Freddy movie. New Nightmare predates Scream by 2 years. This was the first movie to really lay the foundation for what would become meta horror. And this movie was made as a 10-year tribute to the first Nightmare on Elm Street movie. It takes place in the real world, and it shows the effects that this movie had on, fictionalized versions of Heather Langenkamp and Robert Englund and characters like that, and how Freddy is now a real world threat as opposed to a fictional threat. I thought Wes Craven handled that perfectly. And you have a batshit third act where Heather Langenkamp accepts her role as Nancy, and she goes into like this weird, just nightmare-filled playground that's Freddy's domain. Very creative, very cool. This movie's full of a lot of creativity. I love New Nightmare. I love New Nightmare for its freshness and uniqueness. And this New Nightmare to me gave a Freddy that was more menacing and more creepy than who he was in the first movie. That's just my thoughts personally. Maybe because in this one, Wes Craven was able to get across the original idea he had for Freddy when he first conceived of the character. So yeah, those are my thoughts on the 12 Wes Craven movies that I have in my possession. Let me know your thoughts in the comment sections down below. Like the video and subscribe, and I will check you back next time for more.